Welcome. So Jacob Chase, writer and director of Come Play, out in theaters on Halloween, correct? Yes.
Yeah, out in theaters October 30th, just in time for Halloween.
Yes, very exciting. Well, congrats and welcome. First of all, how are you faring during this pandemic? First and foremost, how are you doing?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, we've been relatively lucky. I mean, myself and my family are all healthy, and we're staying safe and not seeing too many people, and doing things that going to places that seem to be taking the precautions seriously.
Yeah, well, which is great. All we can do at this point, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely weird times.
Yeah. How does it feel releasing a film in this atmosphere right now?
Well, it's bittersweet. I mean, I'm really happy people are going to get to see the film. It's the perfect time to release the movie.
Mhm.
Is it exactly the way I wanted the movie to come out? Of course not.
Yeah.
But I do think, look, theaters seem to be taking really great precautions and with the social distancing and masks and stuff. And so I do feel like it seems like a pretty great way to still have our entertainment on a big screen with great sound system and everything.
Okay. No, and it's really exciting. I talked to a lot of writers and directors who are either very energized during this time, or they're in a virtual film fest, so it's a different habitat for them altogether. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to see everything kind of transition back into theaters, which is really exciting. Which is, some people are apprehensive, some people are like, I can't not see a movie in a theater. I have to see it in its full spectrum. But
Yeah.
first and foremost, I do want to talk about Larry, which was your proof of concept for Come Play. That's correct, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the short I made.
And I loved it. I watched it like 6 times. I showed it to like a bunch of people, and I was like, oh my God, this is like super fun. How did you
Thank you.
segue from Joe the lot attendant to Oliver in the film?
Yeah. So the short film. I mean, when you make a short movie, the goal is just to like makes people feel something in a very short amount of time. It's
Sure.
one scene basically. At least all my favorite short films are just like one great scene. But obviously, when you're making a feature film, you want to put the audience on a journey. You want to have characters, excuse me, that really go on a journey. And so when I was exploring what the feature would be, it really came from what Larry is, the monster, and sort of what he's capable of. And sort of once I figured out like, he's a monster that really sort of has access to you through your technology, I started thinking about, who are the characters that would be like the worst possible thing for, right? Because like
Mhm.
in a horror movie, you want to like put people really through hell, basically,
Yeah.
and kind of torture your characters a little bit, and then hopefully they triumph at the end. But for me to figure out like who the worst possible people for this to happen to, I came up with this idea of a family that really needed the technology to communicate with each other.
Mhm.
They needed it even more than sort of you or I use our phones on a daily basis. And then sort of separately, my wife is actually, she works with the autism community, and she's an early interventionist. So I had a sort of a window into that world for several years. And sort of had grown to kind of love the community and understand a bit about the community that I wouldn't have otherwise known about if I didn't have such close proximity. And so, I know, having the knowledge I did about kids on the spectrum, it was like, oh, if I sort of created a character with someone who is nonverbal, that would be the perfect sort of family to sort of be in
Sure.
crisis when Larry came to haunt them.
Mhm. And so they definitely did. They definitely did. And it's funny that you not funny, haha, but it just in happenstance that this particular family, you have children that are tied to their screens. And they pull away, and it's time to put that away and be social with your family, and having Oliver be his only means of communication is really, it's so detrimental to this family, and it really puts them in such a predicament where you have no choice but to really root for their success in all of this. And it's absolutely excellent to follow. First of all, I want to say thank you, especially for putting a marginalized character like Oliver being on the spectrum. My son is also on the Asperger spectrum, so for me, it was
Oh, wow.
it was very interesting, and it was lovely to see that type of protagonist. Um, in there, because you don't, especially not even in horror. We don't see enough of that as the champion or the main protagonist or the hero. Even an anti-hero, we don't see enough of with that. So I wanted to say especially thank you to that. That's was really my motivation for asking how you developed that, because I think it's so interesting, especially in this genre. You've taken a character like Oliver, who is non-speaking, on the spectrum, and gave him such a huge role, a huge pair of shoes to fill to really carry this movie through, and did an excellent job of it. And it's kind of weird. I mean, as a, you know, working with children, and I'm sure you've seen, it's that detachment, even as adults, how we cannot detach from our screens, our tablets, our TVs, our phones, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like that Larry would develop? I mean, I feel like Larry is kind of really tangible for us as adults. I mean, there's so much danger to us not being able to put our phone down. We've got, you know, social media aspects. We've got compare and contrast lives as adults.
Yeah.
I feel like he's already here and constantly feeding it. So for me, it was very real to watch. So that was
Yeah.
excellent for that. How do you feel about how that type of effect is on adults? How that
Sure.
lack of connection is feeding us, feeding our loneliness, really.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just sort of jumping to the first thing you said there, thank you for sort of commenting on having a character with autism sort of at the center of this. It's very important to me that was you know that's simply part of who he is as a human being, right? It's not all he is, and
Yeah.
he's the hero of the movie, and he's this amazing young kid. I think that's so well intentioned, that sees the best in people, that has a great sense of humor, that has no guile. Like he's somebody I was anxious to write, and it was so much fun to watch Edgy bring him to life. So then to your question, sort of about how adults deal with lack of connection and screen sort of playing a part of that. I mean, I think you're absolutely right to use the word connection, because to me, the film was never about like, oh, the dangers of technology to me. Of course, we're going to read into that a little bit because we all sort of know that technology and our screens are kind of affecting us. But for me, it was more about the sense of that lack of connection. It was about a family sort of learning to connect through this, horrifying experience. And yes, sometimes that's with the technology, sometimes it's without. And so I think, as adults, like, look, I'm addicted to my phone as much as anybody. So like, I'm in no position to like make a judgment of people who are addicted to their phones. But I'm also super aware that like there's little things you can do over time to try to put it down and connect with people in a more tangible way. And look, technology is amazing right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're able to have this conversation because of it. I'm able to see my friends that I haven't seen in 7 months, but I'm able to see them over Zoom, or like my mom, who I'm not allowed to like be around really, I'm able to see like over Zoom. So, I think, technology is a tool more than anything. And I think we all could sort of use to take a little bit more time just to connect with each other, whether that's through FaceTime or Zoom or some other means.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I was just like, it's right here. It's like, right. Cannot disconnect from it, which is, yeah, it is scary. And that's for me, at least for me. And I watched it with my youngest son, who was he's just getting into loving horror movies. I'm a genre screenwriter too. So, getting
Nice.
him into that. So he's slowly enjoying that, which I absolutely love. But that was terrifying. It's like, we cannot detach. Like, this is how we communicate, and we're kind of stuck communicating this way. So it's very real.
Yeah.
It's just an excellent play on that. For me, one thing stuck out that was for me really great. A lot of the movie, especially for myself, was very relatable due to what my son goes through. But normalizing parental discord and divorce within this film, within this whole story. Is there anything about Sarah and Marty's dynamic that was important to portray during the film?
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I am the child of a divorced family. I
Mhm.
mean, so are a lot of my friends. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's never something that's easy, and not something that I think anybody wishes for, but it's also just part of life.
Yeah.
And I think in trying to create a lived in world with people that feel real,
Mhm.
um, that it felt accurate to what everyone was going through.
Mhm.
You know, I wasn't, you know, necessarily trying to say anything about divorce other than just, you know, this is
Life.
one kind of family. It's
Yeah.
life. Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, you know, even sort of if you separate and stuff, like that love for the child is really still there.
Mhm.
You know, in the best circumstances, of course. And you know, regardless of the relationship sort of fracturing in the film, you know, both of their love for Oliver really shines through, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting, especially with how tense it is for Sarah trying to go through that, and Marty in turn going through that. And what would parents say? And in one strange, she says, you know, can you be normal? And it's interesting because what as parents would we be able to say without consequence that we were really
Mhm.
feeling in the moment, with that anger, with that stress. And I think within that, coupled in as horrific and scary as this story is, you have that reality that it is still difficult to do. It's still difficult to raise this child. It's difficult to carry on this relationship. It's difficult to just be a friend to another woman and have that dynamic be okay too. So I loved all the pieces that were pulled in from this movie. It was just, I adored it. I thought it was just great. It was a really great
That-
job.
that's great to hear. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, no worries. What was probably there's a lot of light play in this movie, which I really love, which I think is really essential to any horror movie, playing with the light, playing with shadows, color. Was there any scene where you were like looking at your script, I gotta do this. I see this in my head. I have to see it on the screen. Was there any scene where you were just like, that's gotta get done?
Yeah, every scene in the script. I mean,
The whole movie
uh,
mode? Jeez.
yeah, I mean, I don't really write anything that I don't see in my head.
Right.
You know, I'm definitely a big visual
Mhm.
thinker. So when I come up with set pieces and horror sequences and whatever, like I'm thinking about the blocking and the camera and everything, like as I'm writing it. So I mean, honestly, everything. I can say like stuff I was the most excited for were, you know, like the sleepover sequence I was very excited for because I knew
Mhm.
like getting the, you know, this right group of kids together was going to be both funny and horrifying. And getting to see Larry for the first time in that
Yeah.
sequence. You know, every time that Larry the monster pops up was something I was eager to you know look forward to on the shooting day because we you know had this big 9 foot tall puppet as Larry, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And then also honestly, like some of the stuff I was the most excited about were like some of the small character interactions between like for instance Byron, the sort of bully character, and Oliver.
Mhm.
You know, sort of watching their dynamic at play and watching sort of how both those characters grow throughout the course of the film. Just those sort of small moments were so wonderful to watch these wonderful young actors play on set.
No, I loved it. And for Larry, first of all, Larry is very it's very Giger-esque to me. I just love how tall and bony and everything that he is.
Mhm.
Was there any type of inspiration for the concept art for him that you drew from, or it just looks like a nightmare incarnate to me? So, which I
Well,
guess
that's
is a great
great.
success.
Yeah. I mean, the true story of sort of how Larry came to be the monster is, you know, I used to run this haunted house. And one year I had made this big stilts costume that looked a lot like Larry, long, gangly limbs and extremely long arms. And I would get up on the stilts and scare people. And then I stopped doing the haunted house for a while because I just my career was you know taking over sort of my life and but I missed Halloween so much and I missed doing something with my friends who put the haunted house together with me. And I still had that costume. And so I was like, let's make a short film in a parking lot. I've got this costume. I'm gonna, you know, use him. So I sort of had the costume already, and that sort of became the silhouette for Larry in the short film. And
Yeah,
then when I worked with the Jim Henson Creature Shop and Aaron Sims, our concept artist, and Sarah Ferber, who's the artist who drew all the work in the storybook in the movie.
gorgeous. Yeah.
Sort of all together, you know, we really I guess took inspiration from the initial costume and tried, my direction to all of them was like, I want a creature that feels sort of pained the way he walks. He needs to almost embody loneliness in the way he looks. He's a monster who needs to both look terrifying, but also somehow you're able to align with him and understand his plight of just like wanting a friend. So this group of amazing artists were able to translate that into something that I think is quite beautiful and terrifying.
Yeah, it did the job. Did the job for me. And especially his sound, with the sound design of Larry. Where was the inspiration for that? I mean, it fits so perfectly together. What you think he would sound like? What was your inspiration for his sound design?
Yeah, I mean, it was, again, amazing sound team. But the direction I sort of gave to them was similar to the look of him. Like I wanted something that didn't sound like he was ever trying to scare you. Like it should be scary and unnerving, but he is in pain. He is like moaning with displeasure and discomfort. His bones should feel uncomfortable to move around in the same way that we feel uncomfortable when we are, longing for a friendship. Look, they were able to take that, and there's a bunch of different versions we went through, but they were able to take my gibberish of notes and create something quite spectacular. And it was fun. We all took turns like trying to voice Larry, and even Oliver, actually, Edgy, who plays Oliver, like he actually did some voicing of Larry too, just to try different things. I think it turned out quite well. I mean, I love the way his bones sound, almost like sort of these hollow like tree trunks is kind of one of the things I talked about with them.
Yeah, and it's almost like a wet sound too. There's just like this wet atmosphere about him too, which is great, which also peaks up the scariness. The concept of it, I just think, is really, really beautiful. I mean, you've got something that is accessible to everybody: a phone, a tablet, TV, a screen. Out of that, I mean, that TV screens, I mean, I feel like the Ring really ruined giant TVs for everybody. Right. And I feel like this might do a little bit of that, just get people really thinking about, what is behind my screen as a mundane thing. And I always ask, especially horror directors and actors, what mundane thing in this world scares you?
What mundane thing? I mean, first of all, it's the tablet thing is, and screens, like it's really hard to make a sort of piece of glass terrifying, right? I always tried to treat it less like the screen is what you're afraid of, and always make sure that you're afraid of what's on the other side of the screen. In the same way that like in Jaws, we all ended up afraid of water, but like we're not really afraid of water. We're afraid of the shark in the water. Right. So that's how I tried to treat the screens, that they were the water, basically. But in terms of something I'm afraid of, okay, the true answer is I have this terrible phobia, and I always blank on the name of the phobia, but it is a real thing. You can look it up. of large man-made objects. Especially in the dark. So like the Hollywood sign in the dark, or like roller coasters when they're not lit up. I get petrified and freeze, and it's sort of, there's no logical explanation for it other than like, I know it, my heart gets racing. I have giant anxiety attack when I see these things, and luckily you don't experience that very often in your life. But the few times I have, it's just utterly horrifying for me.
Oh my gosh, I will have to look that up. I have a friend that's afraid of like large animals, like the page. She's like, I can't zoo.
That's funny.
Just up close. But
I think it's called megalophobia, maybe.
It
I might be wrong.
Right? Giant.
I was glad when I Googled it finally, and I was like, oh, I'm not alone. There are other people that have this crazy thing.
Mine is probably like a tear in the screen. Just
interesting.
Any type of way someone could get in or through. Right. I've always been terrified of that.
Huh. That makes sense.
I'm like, it's
See, that's logical though. That feels logical to me. Like, oh, you're afraid of someone being able to get in. Like, what am I afraid of? A giant roller coaster at night? I don't know.
It's a thing. You found it. You Googled
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's real. No, that's great. Like I always like to ask, like, especially those those that are writing and directing horror and giving us such, horrific ideas to be afraid of things we might not have thought of. And now it creates something in the culture. I always like to find out exactly what scares you. Like, they have talked to people who are afraid of the dark. People that will not have laundry sitting on a chair because in the dark it looks like something else, and they're
Sure.
very it's made them very tidy. It's kind of odd, but it's just interesting to hear. So my last question for you, and I like I said, I ask these two questions out of most of the people that I talk to. We're seeing a lot of horror reboots as of late. With The Thing, there's going to be a reboot of The Thing. They're just coming and coming and coming. If you were able to reboot any horror film your way, what would it be?
If I was able to reboot any horror film my way, I mean, man, that's a
Loaded.
good question. Look, I think any successful reboot or remake just needs to do something different. Like I think, gosh, what movie would I want to reboot? It's like I think of like my favorite horror movies, but I wouldn't want to touch those.
Right.
It's like it's almost like you. Yeah, I goodness gracious. I mean, I think. A reboot of my favorite horror movies. I mean, I do. Does it count if there's like a prequel I want to do? Like I am
whatever you want. This is gentleman's choice.
Like something I would love to do, and an idea that I've had for a bit is in Poltergeist is one of my favorite movies, the original. And I think there's a prequel to be done about the character who comes in. I'm blanking on her name.
Zelda.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I want to see like her life story, how she grew up, when she realized she had these powers, this ability, how people treated her when they discovered that she had this ability. And the horrifying thing she went through to sort of get to the point where she's confident enough to walk into people's houses and tell them how to sort of rid themselves of these spirits. So yeah, I mean, I think that's one answer. I don't know if anyone would want to see that movie, but it's a movie I would want to make.
A lot of people would. I think a lot of people would. That's an excellent answer. Excellent answer. Because there's so many, there's so many characters, like her character is just iconic. Like there's so much stuff, there's memes on her, and then just her as a person and where her career went after that. I think that would be really essential watching.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk to Steven Spielberg about it.
There you go.
Let you know.
There you go. Just you don't have to let me know. Just do it. But no, I wanted to say again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit with me and really just chat about the movie. I really love the film. I'm so excited for everything that's going to come from it, and great job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm really excited for you. So
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Of course. My pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Right. Bye.